Ladies, the only podcast we know of where girls talk about industrial automation.
Welcome to another Automation Ladies episode. Today we have Alice Rystov and Cassie Gardner from eTech Group. But just a quick update, we just had OT SCADACon and it was really successful. And thank you to all our sponsors for that. And thank you to the volunteer team, especially. Let's jump right into it. Alice, I guess you can go first, but could you tell us about who you are and how you got to be managing controls people?
Sure, no problem. So I graduated with a degree in chemical engineering from UC Davis in 2015, and I just found my way into automation through a couple friends who were doing it, and I really enjoyed programming, so it made a lot of sense. And I've sort of stayed there ever since. I spent the first couple of years of my life on the client side at bioengineering, and then I went to an integration company, and I just never left. I ended up managing people through a series of events. I think the most important one was doing something very similar in an organization called ISPE, which is the International Society of Pharmaceutical Engineers. So I had my own committee and led my own programs and those kind of things long before I went into formal leadership.
Great. What about you, Cassie?
Yeah, I have a very similar background to Alice. So I also have an engineering degree from UC Davis, but mine is in bioengineering. And my favorite class that I took my senior year of college was instrumentation and controls. And the professor had he had a good connection with industry, and he introduced me to a gentleman named Gary Powell, who at the time worked for an integrator called Banks Integration. And Gary had just started an internship program, and I was the second intern hired into Banks. And at the time, we were about 15 people. So that's how I got started, and just really enjoyed the environment, the people, the challenge. In general, I'm very curious, so it ended up being a very good fit for my interests.
Awesome.
Then, when it comes to managing people, so my current role, so I managed people for about 10 years or so. In my current role, I don't have to manage people anymore, but I still love working with people. I am director of corporate development now, so I support things like mergers and acquisitions, and I'm the head of partnerships. So I own our relationships with Rockwell and Ignition, et cetera, some of those big brands out there. But managing people is something I always loved. I love working with people, and I also enjoy getting to work with Alice occasionally here and there. So it's been good.
Awesome. Alice, what are some majors that you think, and I guess this is also for Cassie, but what are some majors that are really good fit for controls engineers? I personally feel that chemical engineers are amazing at it, but because they understand the process, but there's definitely some other contenders of majors that we should encourage to come over to the control side.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. So I do a lot of outreach and mentorship for colleges in terms of getting exposure to what automation is. And I always encourage anybody from any major to, think about a career in automation, because to your point, there's so many that would be a great fit, right? So I've hired people from everything from, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. I even had someone from biology that I hired, and she was just great. So I really actually think automation can be open to almost any major. It's them.
Yeah, I second Alice's opinion. I think because there is not necessarily a clear do this major, the industry is used to having to coach and train and do on-the-job training for the types of skills that we need from our team members, our engineers. So if you have a general aptitude for computers, talking to people, problem solving, those are the things you need. And my bioengineering degree also gave me the advantage of some of our life sciences clients. I got to understand the process a little bit better, just like the two of you with your chemical engineering degrees. But I think there's a lot to be said for people who just have curiosity and problem solving acumen.
What are some advice for chemical engineers chemical engineers that want to do controls in terms of their career? What can they do to get into controls?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm really excited to where things have evolved, because it was pretty different when I graduated. There wasn't necessarily the access there is right now. So I think my first piece of advice is find a mentor. right? People like myself and Cassie are always happy to do things like that. We really love encouraging young talent to come into the industry because we love it so much, and we think other people will too. When I was talking about kind of like the evolution of things that weren't there when I graduated, Ignition actually offers the core credential for free for students. And it's this really awesome program they run. And Ignition is becoming, and now is, such a valuable skill set in industry. I think it's a great way to get your foot in the door.
That's a huge, good, really good piece of advice. Ignition. I remember when Ignition was coming out, that's how they got so popular, is they were giving free training. Mm-hmm. Without that, I don't think they would have become as huge as they are. But Ignition is everywhere now. Absolutely. And it is a really important skill to be learning right now if you're a controls engineer. What about you, Cassie? Do you have any advice for controls engineers?
I think Alice's advice is great. I would say, like, if you want to get into the industry or any industry, a good strategy is informational interviews. I love to recommend those. That's my number one piece of advice. For anyone who doesn't know, an informational interview is where you find a professional working in the field that you're interested in. You find them on LinkedIn or through a family member, or who cares? You find them and you reach out to them and say, hey, I am really curious about your job. Would you sit down with me for 30 minutes or an hour, and I could ask you some questions about what you like about your career, how you got into it, et cetera. And that turns into a conversation where the person, the career seeker, learns about the industry, learns about the pros and cons, and they make hopefully a human connection in that space that actually can refer them on to people who may be hiring, or they might have more concrete advice to help you take the next step towards finding that job. So that's my number one go-to. If you are a job seeker, I think that's such a valuable tool in the toolbox. It's just, but you do have to be comfortable talking to strangers, which can, that takes some practice.
But there's strangers out there that are willing to teach.
Absolutely. For free.
Absolutely.
For free.
Yes, totally. People love to talk about themselves. Hence, we're on this podcast.
It's true. It's so true.
So why not give them the opportunity and see where it takes you?
Okay. This question is for Alice. Can you talk about what ISPE is?
Yeah, of course. So ISPE is like a greater organization. It stands for the International Society of Pharmaceutical Engineers. As like a greater organization, what they do is they take guidelines from the FDA and they sort of put them into practical guidelines, right? So they're the ones who publish the GAMP5, the new automation guidelines for AI that are coming out. So they're the ones who kind of take, the advice and guidance that the FDA issues and, create guides as to how to actually implement that in practice. ISP also has a more social component to it for folks who are in the pharma industry. And it's cool because, I think a lot of clubs, like AICHE or, like the civil engineering club or electrical engineering, it's very specific to the major and kind of like the field of study, where ISPE, I know people from construction, from data science, from, lab folks, and they can all participate in ISPE. It's a really great organization. I think it's a great net benefit to folks, wanting to learn about the industry as well.
Great, thank you. What about, can you explain to people who don't know what GMP is?
Cassie, do you want to take this one?
Sure, why not? Yeah. It stands for Good Manufacturing Practices. And you'll also hear things like GAMP, Good Automation Manufacturing Practices. And basically, there is a philosophy for if you want to make a product, if you want to manufacture a product, you want to do it well. And there's some lessons learned other people have been through. And by applying and learning about GAMP, GMP, good processes, you can avoid the mistakes that other people have made. But there's also a regulatory compliance piece. So if you think about the life sciences and pharmaceutical industry, they are often looking towards like a federal code of regulations to make sure they're in compliance. And practices like GAMP and GMP can help you stay in compliance with those like federal code of regulation rules. So it's all about doing things well in the right way. Keep your patients safe, your customers safe, that kind of stuff.
And you can find it in life sciences and food and beverage, right?
Absolutely. Yes, totally. Yeah.
And food and beverage, and both of them have different gowning, which is unique to the industry, or to automation. And, not everyone loves putting on the booties and the beard nets and the hair nets.
Come on, career seekers need to wear the bunny suits. That is the best part of the job.
Selfie wearing the strange suit is customary before you go in.
Alice, how did you feel? You worked for a biotech company. Did you like gowning in to the clean rooms?
It was just a necessary evil, you know. You just got used to it like anything else at some point.
Fair enough.
Well, I was just going to ask if either one of you ever had to double up on the gowns, like had to wear more than one layer of protective stuff.
There's ones, I don't think I've ever been to a manufacturing facility with like this level of like guidance needed or this like gowning needed, but it was apparently so much that it was like someone had like an air tube attached like to the bunny suit, so like a space suit basically, where they had to go and just kind of like spacewalk into the, into the bioreactor room.
Well, I think it's fun. There's some novelty there, but yeah, if you have to do it every day, I think it gets old. But for me, on the consulting side, Alice worked at the biotech company and also as a consultant. So she has both experiences. She has probably the experience of having to do it on a regular basis. But for me, doing it as an engineer, as a consultant on an occasional basis, it was like a little fun, just a little. Yeah. You're like, all right, I'm going to do this for 2 weeks and, we'll get a laugh each time. And then I get to go back to my normal life and work from home the rest of the time.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing that always happened, I'm sure you ran into this, Cassie, it's like you always forget your tools. Like the one day you need them, you have to like gown back out. You're like, oh,
that is the worst
of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys are managers. Let's talk about active listening versus presuming.
Sure.
Go for it, Alice.
Active listening versus presuming. So I think we as people, we tend to imprint our own thoughts and ideas onto people. And, our own goals for them based on like our own experiences. And with that, right, I think it's much easier. I think it's one of those things when you go into management, you just kind of have to learn that not everyone wants things done the same way that you do. So for example, right, not everybody wants the same one-on-one cadence. And you know what? Like, I think at first you really want like that structure. But then I think you started to, at least like for me, like I've started to realize that, it's okay that there's variety between like what people want and, what their goals are, right? So if some of my folks, I meet with one-on-one, every week, some of them I meet every like 3 weeks. So you have like a threshold of like when I have to meet with them. But kind of taking us back to active listening, I think being a good leader, a good manager is so dependent on really listening to what people are telling you and incorporating that feedback into your own actions.
I'll second that. If I can just add on, so totally agree with what Alice highlighted. And there's a couple of philosophies that I think about to be a good listener, there's a few things you need to do. You need to validate what people are saying. So if you hear someone share a feeling or a concern, before you move on, you need to verbally acknowledge receipt of that information. So closed loop communication, right? Like, thanks for sharing that this was really frustrating for you, or thanks for sharing that you actually don't want to be a manager and that's not the right career goal for you. So acknowledge and then ask clarifying questions. I am really curious, what is it you're actually interested in? What do you find yourself excited by as you're, working throughout the day? Are you most engaged when you're heads down in the middle of the PLC code? Do you like working on the spreadsheets? Do you love pivot tables? Like, what do you love? Or do you like talking to people and see what people tell you? But the core philosophies to me of being a good listener really are around validating what you've heard, asking clarifying questions, and naming specific feelings whenever you hear them. Like, oh, that sounds frustrating. That sounds exciting. That sounds difficult. Trying to really connect with folks directly and what they're feeling is important.
If people want to become managers, what advice do you have, especially engineers, because they're, notoriously not, I'm not going to say they're not good at it, but like they don't want to. They're really good at doing what they're good at doing, and they don't want to manage other people because there's just too much stress to that, honestly. I've done it. I think it's honestly harder than the engineering itself is the management of engineers. Can you talk about what that journey's been like to learn about people and how to manage them and the psychology behind that?
I mean, I think it's like a two-part answer, right? It really does suck a lot of times that when people look Like when people look at their career advancement, they kind of see management as like the only track that they can go to, right, to get either the pay that they want, or, just kind of continue to advance in their career. I think industry as a whole, I've seen it get better about maintaining people in an SME role if that's what they want to be, right? Where you get to like a principal engineer. I've seen a lot of directors who are still really technical and who don't necessarily do management. So, for anyone who's listening who feels like they have to go into management, even if it's something they don't want to do, that's really not the case anymore. Maybe it used to, but I think it's gotten to a place where it's at least much better. So if you don't want to, you don't have to. At the same time, a lot of these folks who maybe are not maybe as naturally oriented towards being, great managers, right, or maybe more people focused, I've seen a lot of those people become some of the best managers that I've ever worked with because they're very tactical. So they know what their gaps are and they know how to use strategy and data and calendar events and check-ins and OneNotes to make themselves great managers, right? To say the right things at those check-ins, to make sure they're really assessing where their people are at, to, driving communication with other groups to make sure they're getting those opportunities for those people. So if you don't have that skill set, it's okay. It's also something you can learn.
Yeah, I think that's good. There's a couple things that you touched on that are really good there, Alice, which is like, what is the role of a manager? What is a good manager doing, right? And they are, in my opinion, I'm curious what you all think, but in my opinion, a good manager is handling the care and feeding of the people reporting to them. And that incorporates a couple different things. It incorporates the finding them opportunities, helping them reach their aspirations, coaching, giving feedback, and also helping that team get the work done that the company needs to succeed. So you have to balance all of these things, and it's not an easy thing to do. Alicia, you touched on the psychology. There's a lot that goes into individual reasons for motivation and engagement. And I think some good first steps, if you are interested in becoming a manager, would be classes on leadership philosophies and things, help you understand what it takes to get the important work done and to talk to people and connect with them and bring them along to that process. So I think that's where I really started managing people. Is I took a class through the UC Davis extension that was a leadership class, and so many of the philosophies were really interesting. I was like, wow, this is so cool to learn what motivates people and how to work with them. I feel like it's a good place to start because there is so much to cover to be a good manager. But it also, if you just in your heart, you look at your core values, you want to help people, I think you have what it takes to be a good manager a lot of the time. That's where it starts.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just to like add on to that right there, when I was talking about like there's lots of ways to get practical experience in managing people, one of the easiest things to do is become someone's mentor, right? A lot of folks, like when they're at the place in their career where they start thinking about, do I want to be a manager? They look and say, well, how do I get practical experience? At that point, you're probably, pretty strong technical SME. So why not find a young engineer or, somebody who's interested in learning, the platform that you're really familiar with and mentoring them, right? It's a really great hands-on way to, interact with somebody sort of in a similar way that you would as their manager.
It's a good shout out. Yeah, I think it's, there's a lot of people who need it too. Like they're hungry for it. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Thank you for that. What is your approach to conflict?
Be direct.
Yep.
Yeah. I think, and Cassie, I'm sure you think this too. It's an understandable tendency to like avoid things that are difficult. I think we as people just find conflict to be difficult, but the sooner you address it, the sooner you give that feedback, the sooner both of you can resolve whatever that situation is.
Yeah.
Just take it. Just do it.
Do it. Just do it.
Just do it.
You guys find across, like right now in my job, I'm working with more Gen Z, I think, than I ever have in my past. And I'm curious if you guys have seen, because we all kind of generationally do things different or just have different wants and needs from being at work. Like, do you guys find that struggle between managing boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z all kind of in the same house?
I think what I've seen, and Cassie, I'm really curious to your answer to this because I think you work with like a bigger threshold of people that I do. So I mentioned like I mentor like really heavily. So I mentor probably like 5 to 10 young engineers at the same time, not necessarily eTech, but sort of through all my different, outreach things that I do. And then I do have some people who are older who report to me. And as long as you are persistently kind is like the way that I put it. And as long as people feel like you really care about them and you have their best interests at hearts, yes, like how you manage them is probably different, right? But I think as long as you perpetuate that sense of kindness and that you care about them, it's been pretty uniform in my experience.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for the starting with the human side than the kindness first. I think that's a great framing, Alice. If I think about conflict and how I handle conflict, and then how I manage folks who come from different backgrounds, different cultures, different generations. It starts with the active listening, just starting with where are you? If I know there is a tense topic I need to talk about, I start by opening the door with what is going on for that person so I can meet them where they are and try and bring them along to where I think we need to be. And I think the same thing applies regardless of what generation you're managing or what have you. I do a lot of managing up. I'm managing folks who I'm trying to get results out of people who are much older than me or generationally, or even sometimes from an authority perspective are higher than me in an organization. And so there's a softer approach you have to take, which maybe applies to some different generations also. But first find out where they are and try and adapt.
Switching gears, when I went to school, so I'm a 2010 chemical engineering graduate, and I did process engineering for 3 years before I went into controls. But I feel like when I started as a chemical engineer that I was just not prepared to do chemical engineering. And I think that's because there is a gap between academia and industry.
Oh, yeah.
Can you please talk about bridging that gap?
So for me, it's so funny you bring this up. I went through the exact same thing. I was like, I learned fluid mechanics in school. And I solved these equations. I still remember what the Reynolds number is. I don't know why. I can't forget it a thread. And someone is asking me to troubleshoot a VFD. What do these two things have in common? And the answer is nothing. So the way that I personally try to bridge that gap is I probably go to 5 or 6 different colleges at various times through the year. I give talks about what automation is, and I do it at a very relatable level of this is your thermostat kind of thing. And I always say, if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I've done things like running ignition workshops. So I think kind of like what Cassie mentioned earlier, right, is that there's no real feeder major for automation. We can pull from almost anything. So the best way to bridge that gap, particularly into automation, is probably through experience and mentorship.
And as a company, I'll just add, for us, we expect to train people. When folks are coming out of college as a new grad, we are not expecting a new grad to know how to get online with a PLC and how to make a change. That is all. We have formal training programs. We have resources to help bring those folks to where, teach them the skills we need them to have to be effective. And if you are the engineer who is going through that transition, I think the important thing for you to think about is keeping an open mind, trying to take ownership of the problems that are in front of you, and using the resources available to you wisely, but also using them. Yeah. Right. So you can ask for help, but do try and do the thing yourself before you ask, and give it a good college try. Yeah. We hired a lot of new grads from UC Davis, and Bill Mueller, who was my mentor for many years, he started a term called Davis done, where new grads would show up and they would be like, oh, it's done. I did it. I did the thing. And then you go and look, and they did 60% of it, a bunch of stuff they left blank or they did incorrectly, and they didn't ask for help, or they didn't take ownership and say, I need this piece. So don't be Davis done.
Yeah, no, that is such a great point to make. Or it's Cassie's so right. We don't look if you're coming in as an entry level engineer, it's okay. We understand that, we're not going to put you as a sole contributor on a project and expect the world from you. If we're targeting people who are new to industry, what I always try to tell them is be resourceful and be communicative. So what does that mean? I'm your manager. I give you an assignment. You have no idea what you're doing. That is totally okay. Go lurk around SharePoint. Go lurk around these other resources we've given you. We have all this information in the company drive. Go read a couple documents. Then draft an email. Hey, Alice, I wasn't really sure how to do XYZ. This is what I started. This is my proposed path forward. Does this look okay? And then set up a meeting with me, right? Be resourceful, be communicative. We don't want you to struggle, but we aren't really going to know if you're struggling if you don't communicate.
I love that.
I break it really good too, because I think a lot of us are afraid to break it. And like on my end, if I told you as an intern to go touch the motor and you blow up the motor, I'll go tell the manager I told an intern to touch the motor.
Absolutely right.
There's always like a backup. Right. There's a backup motor. There's a backup plan for you breaking the thing. Don't worry.
Absolutely right. But I remember that feeling too, and I remember how frightening it was, right? So I think in times too, we could do a little bit better about acknowledging that, hey, if you have 5 minutes to talk, like just ping me. And it was like a younger engineer, and they're like, oh my God, I'm getting fired. Like when I talked to them, I was like, no, I was going to tell you that you did a great job. So lesson learned, don't do that.
Yeah, it's fair. I do think there's a lot to be said for the break it advice. This is not a new grad story, but my mom is older and she struggles with technology. And I am constantly having to be like, I know you could, I'm like, we have a coaching relationship when it comes to her phone. And I'm like, come on, Mom, you can do it. I promise you're not going to break it. And if you do, I promise I will fix it. Like, go for it. And then that's what she needs. And she does it. She does great. So sometimes that little push, there is a tricky thing though, because there's the comfort zone and then there's like the being stretched, the challenge zone, and then there's the panic zone, right? So as a mentor and a leader, you have to figure out how to get people into the challenge zone and not into the panic zone. Because I have done that also where I've made engineers cry. And I was like, that was not the plan. I'm really sorry about that. But it happens.
It does.
Have you guys ever made a technical mistake, and how did you handle that?
Absolutely. Who hasn't made a technical mistake? I think like one of the first, I don't remember like what year it was that I was in, but I took down half the network because I created a network loop because I plugged to the Ethernet cable into 2 switches at the same time. To be fair, someone told me the other one wasn't working, so it shouldn't have done that. Right? And on top of that, right, it notifies everybody when you do that. Like all of automation is like, oh no, the network's down. So yeah, just dealt with it. I had a Kappa, created, like a report on it, and we all moved on.
Yes, mistakes happen. I think that's fair. I'm trying to think of a good if I have a good story. In general, I can't think of a good one right at this moment, but in general, mistakes are totally okay. They happen all the time. It is just important to disclose when you make one and to apologize and take corrective action. Take ownership and say, here's what I can do to help fix it if you want me to continue.
I think that's the biggest thing is taking ownership. So I blew up a VFD, and the story of that was that it was not so I was working for a roaster company, and it wasn't my project. And the guy whose project it was, the controls engineers whose project it was, wasn't there. And the mechanical engineers wanted to run a fan. So they wanted me to power up this control panel and I hadn't seen this particular roaster ever done in anything other than 480. So I went and got 480 and I hooked it up, and it was a 230 panel. And I got the purple smoke, and that was terrifying. And actually, as I spent the rest of that day and the next day looking for all the parts that I broke, because I broke the PLC power supply fuse. The little fuse in there was broken. It disappeared. The CC fuses on the secondary, or maybe the primary of the control transformers, were busted, CC fuses, and then the VFD itself. And so the next day, I was sitting there trying to fix it, and wiring the new VFD, and the CEO came over and was just like, "Oh, I heard you blew this up," and I just was like, I was so embarrassed.
Yeah.
And I learned a real lesson about reading the nameplate, and we moved on. They did don't do that. I told my boss at the time, and he was just like, "Oh my God, go fix it immediately." And so take ownership of your mistakes. Another time I actually bought intrinsically safe barriers that were not loop powered. So, and I needed, then my instruments were loop powered. And so they just didn't work. When I went to go read readings, I wasn't getting my 4 to 20 the way I was expecting it to. And yeah, that was, $7,000 of like rework.
You remember that number, huh?
Yeah, money.
That was expensive.
The stuff that you just like end up causing just like makes you feel so bad. But just remember that, like, to come forward and just tell whoever you need to tell immediately.
Yes.
You're hiding it. It's not going to solve anything.
No.
So that's it. And then just own it. Own your mistake. And don't try to hide anything. And that's, my advice that I give for breaking stuff. And don't feel that bad. Obviously try not to break anything, but we break things. And
I should point out now, Greg, like as my mentor, was so good about that. We had a shelf of stuff that if we broke it, we would sign our name on it and leave it on the shelf as like evidence to the next person. That, like, yes, this is how it can break. And if you break it like this, go talk to Courtney.
That's really great. I love that. I think there's something to be said about like creating a culture too. As a manager and as a leader, you need to create the culture where people feel safe to tell you when they make a mistake, right? Because that's a reason that people will try and hide things, is they don't feel like they don't know what will happen and they don't trust that it will be okay. And so as a manager and a leader, you need to like talk about mistakes openly that you make and that the company makes or whatever, and just say like, this is a safe space for us to learn together and we're not expecting perfection.
Right.
What do you guys tell people to prepare them for their first commissioning jobs?
To prepare them, and you're going
to be sitting on a bucket.
Yeah.
Get your own
cardboard
ready.
on 2 trash cans for your laptop setup. Right.
Yes.
So we never, we as a company, and I think just we never send like baby or new engineers like in by themselves for the most part. Right. There's usually someone more experienced there. I think what I have advised people to do from like a more technical standpoint is like write out what you're going to do so you feel prepared. I think a lot of engineers in general, like they don't like write to do things. And maybe this is just because I've spent my whole career in GMP, I literally write everything down. But if I found they seem to be a lot less anxious if they go through and they kind of write themselves a step-by-step guide of, like let's say they're doing loop checks, right? What do I need to bring? I need a voltmeter. I need this, and this. I need these tools. I need this safety equipment. Okay, great. So what am I going to do? I'm going to open the panel. I'm going to review the electrical drawing to make sure I'm in the right place. So what I usually tell folks is like to be prepared. Try to write yourself a little guide.
That's really good advice.
Do they ever do it? I don't know.
Yeah, and hopefully you get sent on a commissioning job with someone who knows what they're doing, and you can write down everything you saw them do.
I love that.
And make yourself your own. If the documentation isn't as good as it could have been, I'm sure at eTech Group it's very well documented exactly how you're going to do all your commissioning. So learn from the documentation. But if it's not there, learn from the guy that's just kind of winging it.
Yeah, exactly.
Or girl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and ask him what they're doing, right? Senior people love to explain all the cool technical stuff they know. That's like almost universal from what I found. Like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. On this project I did this, and then I learned from this because I blew this thing up over here. It's so cool.
Yeah, and it is okay to not know what you are looking at also, and to ask questions like, what's that thing? Like a new grad, like your first commissioning, you should be trying to soak up as much information as you can and asking basic anatomy questions of just the things you're looking at and how things work together. You want to work that in as much as you can. You do also have a job to do. So you're not necessarily there to get trained. So you got to balance that. But I do definitely encourage question asking. And if you're doing some mundane part of the startup or whatever, where you can work in questions, do it.
Yeah, very well said, Cassie.
Can you guys tell me the story of the first PLC that you had to deal with? Do you remember the first PLC?
I think the first PLC I touched was a Micrologics. We had a training kit at the banks in the banks integration era, and we had to program in ladder logic a stoplight routine. So a four-way traffic light, and there was a little micro logics, and you had to push button and be like, I'm a pedestrian trying to cross, or it was all set up like that. And I have to be honest, I did not do a great job, but they still hired me, so it worked out, I guess.
Trainable,
yeah.
I think mine was on like an actual project when I was at Biomer. I think it was a CIP skid, and I was I was programming, produce, consume, communication, like 5 other pieces of equipment. I don't think I'd ever.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fun. Is that what it was? There might have been something before it, but that's the one that.
Was it Allen Bradley?
Yeah.
Yeah, mine. All my experiences in Allen Bradley, and like my first one was also a Micrologics, and it was in a food R&D place, and I think it was making coffee.
Nice.
And it was just not working, so I went online with it, and I was just very nervous. I ended up figuring out what it was. It was physical. It's never in the PLC. They always say that.
It's always in the network.
The PLC doesn't change.
Yeah.
If the equipment dies, and there maybe isn't a alarm that was supposed to be documented and didn't show up.
Right.
And so people don't know what to do when certain things happen. But
but it's always automation's fault, right? It's not working. It's always automation's fault. And you're like, I didn't do anything.
It worked until you changed the PLC code.
Too bad we didn't change it.
I know. I'm glad I didn't even open it.
I'm going to steal another Bill Mueller story, mentor from years ago. He liked to tell the story also at a coffee distribution center, packaged coffee. They were troubleshooting. I forget exactly the story, but it was a conveyance application, and they were troubleshooting, like trying to get it to work, and they could not figure out what was happening. It was the middle of commissioning startup, and eventually they learned that like across the building somewhere, an operator had hit one of the photo eyes with a forklift, and so like that was the whole root cause of the issue. Things were just shifted. So yeah, it's not always our fault.
How did you guys figure that out?
I wasn't there. It wasn't my project. I'm totally stealing Bill's story, but that one always stuck with me in terms of just things to watch out for.
Oh my God.
And I feel like the other piece of advice I like to share for new grads or folks coming into the industry, when you're troubleshooting a problem, you have to teach yourself like systematic thinking. So you got this engineering degree, and it's taught you how to solve problems, but it's also taught you about how to systematically think. So can you look at each situation in front of you and each problem and try and think of what is the most basic place to start that this could be, connected to, and start there, and then work your way up from a troubleshooting perspective to the higher levels of complexity. Is the laptop plugged in? Yes or no, right? So start with the basics, and then basics.
Is the e-stop untwisted?
Very
Yes.
good. Yep. Very good. Yes.
And also like document the things that you're doing to troubleshoot, right? So then when you have to figure out if you've done something already, because it can cause other things, right? Let's say you toggle something on enough, like you don't know if that caused an effect downstream. So always kind of write down what you're doing.
That's a good advice too.
We actually have a Slack channel, multiple Slack channels where I work. If you blew it up or you didn't blow it up, but you found it blown up, you got to put it in the Slack channel so that later somebody else can search that same exact problem and see if somebody already tried this before.
Yeah, love that. The documentation has many uses and it can be shared. Very helpful.
So do you guys ever come across projects where you don't have a control narrative?
I think the majority of our projects are like that, to be honest. I mean, any new facility you're commissioning or you're bringing up, they're sort of doing the process development in parallel to you doing like the automation development.
Yeah, I would say most of our projects, so I would say through the years, I have seen varying levels of sophistication from different clients. And clients have, like, they reach certain points of maturity where they know what they need to do and what's prepared to run a good project. And other times they don't know and they need you to help them along. So it depends. You got to meet the client where they're at. And sometimes we are working with the client who is making, they're building their first manufacturing facility. So they have no idea what their requirements even are, or what a control narrative is, maybe sometimes depending on, they might not even have an automation engineer on this, the owner side, on the staff. So we do sometimes come into projects early stage like that, where we're helping guide clients through that process. And we typically run like a feed study, but most of the time now, by the time we're at the commissioning phase or we're getting to site, there's a well-established control narrative or a functional design spec and a software design spec, and we're following the Gantt life cycle, but not always.
Yeah, I find actually like the biggest gap, whether it's like folks from R&D or automation folks, is usually like what their IT needs are when it comes to like deploying any kind of automation project, right? So if you're deploying, I don't know, like a new Ignition system on site, right, they're probably pretty unfamiliar with kind of server setup you need, or kind of networking needs to be part of that setup, right? You know, just even the basics of, you know, how much storage does this VM need? So that's actually where I found the biggest gap to be these days.
Do you recommend that engineers learn Gantt charts to make Gantt charts?
So can I jump in on this one? I am a project manager. I'm a PM like through and through. It's in my friggin' heart. And I think people who understand how to put things in a Gantt chart, like it's so powerful. It is so powerful when you do it right. Okay. So being able to see the predecessors and dependence of different tasks and see how things play together when you're working on something really big and really complex, there is so much value in that. And I will tell you a funny story. My sister for Thanksgiving, probably maybe 7 years ago now, something like 6 or 7 years ago, we bought her this new Thai cookbook, and she was all excited to make a Thai Thanksgiving spread. And she picked out, I think, 17 recipes or something. And
Oh no.
so project manager Cassie enters the scene, and I'm like, we are so resource constrained. Your oven is tiny. How are we going to get all of this done and delivered on time for everybody to eat Thanksgiving dinner at 4 p.m.? And so guess what I made? The week before Thanksgiving, I made a freaking Microsoft project schedule.
Wow.
Attendance, and we looked at the critical path, and we knew which things we had to do the 2 days ahead of time, and it like flawless execution.
Incredible.
That is amazing. That is a huge I'm not good at Gantt charts.
I feel like I've said this so many times, but I feel like every Gantt chart I have ever made is a lie. And then I'm just updating the lie every week. And if I'm lucky, like I have a Gantt chart at the end that's all slip.
Well, that's very well.
How do you make one that's less of a lie? Do you just use the slip from last time and kind of recalibrate and make it real? Because the closest I've come to a piece of advice was take the worst time you've ever had and the best time you've ever had on a task, and then pick something in the middle, and you'll be like, you know, like 3/4 of the way correct or something. But like, I've never heard of how to make a Gantt chart, just not a big fat lie.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. My advice here is, so I'll start with a quote. I forget, some statistician, I think, said this: all models are wrong, but some are useful, right? So you are looking to get utility out of this Gantt chart, right? You don't have to have it down to the like super perfect precision level, but you got to get it good enough so that it can have a meaningful conversation with your client or with your team about what you're shooting for. So I would think it's more of an art than a science, but trying to balance the number of tasks you have and the level of detail to get that right so that it is actionable and meaningful for the whole team to communicate using, but not getting so detailed that every single piece is a lie. And you're like, why do I have to manage this task that has a 1-day duration? Like, this is stupid. You know, so just try and shoot for the right level of detail to make it a useful conversation piece so that you can then forecast looking ahead to the completion of the project. Like, we all want to eat on time, okay? We're hungry.
Amen. What about scope creep? How do you manage scope creep?
Oh.
I mean, my approach is the same thing as conflict resolution, right? It's just communication, address it with the team, address it with the client, right? Usually it's not something intentional. Like, you know, what I think about it is that, you know, engineers want to work on cool stuff and they get excited about solving problems, right? And sometimes they have to be like, hey, like, this wasn't really part of our scope, right? Or just, you know, saying, hey, maybe we can reallocate these hours. So I always approach things with, I assume people always have the best intentions rather than thinking that they're trying to, do something bad or, like do something intentionally nefarious. And usually that fixes it.
I think that good intent is very powerful, very, very powerful. But there is a little bit of an art to it too, though. I think it depends. Like the scope could come in. You touched on two sources. There's like the clients who can be gently asking for more, and then there's the engineers who can be gold plating because they're like, "This is fun," right? Yeah. So
look at this dashboard, and you're like,
we have dark mode on this now. Nobody else.
I was talking about in an LED lit room 24/7. So cool.
Yes. So I think you manage the two differently. And I think, really communicating expectations with the team and communicating the budget proactively and often with the team and with the client. Like that, to me, it's like early and often communication. Like, hey, I'm looking at the forecast. I'm looking at what's happening. I'm worried we're going to be looking at a change order if we don't start to adjust a little bit here, and try and be like, we don't have to have that conversation if we stop now. Right. So let's try and nip it in the bud.
We're almost out of time. Can you guys tell us where people can contact you if they want to learn more about you or just how to connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. For me, the easiest way is just add me on LinkedIn.
I am the same. Yeah, you can find me. I would say the two best places to find me, LinkedIn, Cassie Gardner. That's my name once again. And then I do an office hours every Friday. It's open to new grads, job seekers, anybody who wants to come in and talk to an industry professional. And typically we are giving career advice. Like we'll do resume reviews, we'll do practice interviews. We will teach you how to do an informational interview so you can get that contact. So you can find information for how to join those office hours on my website. It's called yalomation.org, YAALOMATION.org.
That's so nice of you.
Thank you. I would love to have anybody, and I'm always taking volunteers. Most of the volunteers have a biotech or automation background. So,
yeah. And just to further plug this is open to anyone, basically in any major at any level.
Yes.
And I mean, the types of folks who volunteer for this are really incredible, really kind, and super helpful. So there's that base level of intimidation, I think, for a lot of people who are looking into industry. It's just not there. And Cassie's done such a great job developing it.
Thank you. It's a super safe space, and I cannot take full credit. The people who volunteer are just freaking awesome. Like Matt Dara, Michael Carney, who's with Mesa at one of the local community colleges. We have Mike from Apple. We have so many people who are just so good, and I would encourage anybody to join. The other place you can find Alice is you can find her through ISPE. So if you're looking for a mentor or volunteering opportunities too, so don't forget about that one.
Thanks, Cassie. Yeah. And I mean, just as a follow-up, I am always happy to either find someone to mentor or mentor them myself. And it can be anything from, hey, do you want a resume review? Do you want a practice interview? All these things are obviously free. So just any way that I can help people, I always try to.
That's really nice. You guys are very kind.
Thank you. So are y'all for having us on here. This is super fun.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for having us and for taking the time.
Thank you for listening to Automation Ladies. If you like our content and you want to stay in touch, please connect with us on LinkedIn, follow the show page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can send us a message or a coffee on our website, automationladies.io. We look forward to getting to know you. Our producer is Veronica Espinoza, and our music is composed by Samuel James.